My name's Jack, and I'll be taking you through a small 101 on how Stringer A-SPEC works. Just before I get started, we do have two polls today that I will ask you guys to take a part in, just so that we can get a feel for how you guys are looking at the software. So we'll get moving on. Did you have anything to say about that quickly, JT? Do they need
no,
to do
just
special there?
No, let me know when you want them launched.
Cool. Okay, so we'll move onwards. So, Stringer A-SPEC, what exactly is it? Stringer A-SPEC is currently a standard adopted by many councils around Australia, and it requires the user to lodge a GIS data file, and that GIS data file needs to be issued in a certain structure and format. Now, to do that normally, you've got a few other pieces of software that can do it. However, none of these allow you to do it within your CAD platform, except Stringer A-SPEC. Stringer A-SPEC allows you to apply attribute information to objects within your CAD platform and not have to deal with any of the external issues of having to export out to a different piece of software. Now, Stringer A-SPEC is actually made up of three key areas. Stringer DSpec, which deals with attributing drainage and pipes. Stringer R-SPEC, which deals with road features and furniture. And Stringer OSpec, which deals with the open source information. All three of these are included in the Stringer A-SPEC package, and I'll show you how they work in a second. So, how generally a setup normally goes is you'd have the initial startup, you'd start selecting your objects, you'd then be asked which attribute tables you wish to use for the objects you were selected. You then edit the fields, check for any empty data, any data you might have missed, and then finally export it. Now, just before we get started, we have a first poll, which is just about, have you guys heard of ASpec before, and are you guys currently using it? Do you have that, JT?
Yeah, I'll launch that now.
Cool.
So the poll, I don't know if you can see the poll, Jack.
Yes, I can actually.
You can, fantastic. So guys, yeah, feel free to just click yes or no on both of those. So it's an interesting kind of mix of yes and no for the first one at the moment.
Yeah, I can't actually see the results.
Okay, all right, so, don't worry. Well, at the moment, 45% of you have voted, nearly 70%. So for those of you, if you're not prepared to click on it, you're absolutely fine with that. We'll end the poll now. One more click. So at the moment,
out of curiosity, what was the responses there?
Right, well, at the moment, 60% of people have said that no, they haven't had to lodge ASpec data to councils before, leaving obviously roughly around 40%. And then 70% of attendees have not used a Stringer A-SPEC before. So yeah, interesting results.
The first one's interesting to hear. Councils are starting to bring this up more often. Yeah. I get a number of surveyors sending me emails asking about what do we have that supports what do we have that supports ASpec data? Mm-hmm. So it is becoming more prominent within the survey industry. And it's good to hear that a number of you guys haven't actually seen Stringer A-SPEC before. That'll mean that this webcast will hopefully be more interesting for you guys.
Yeah, so I'll end the poll there.
Yep. So just moving forward, today's presentation will be done in BricsCAD. This is just because it's the easiest software to view all of the information in. It's just a nice little setup. It works exactly the same within AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So you don't have to worry if you're using either of those two pieces of software. It'll work exactly the same. So yeah, we'll move on from here. Cool. So can you see my screen, JT? You should have a plan in front of it.
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, so here we've got some ASpec data. This has been provided by a surveyor in the past. We've gotten permission to use this data set for, and we often use this for training purposes and such, but today I'll be showing you how Stringer A-SPEC works in relation to a job. I won't be populating all of these. That would take me longer than the session allows for, so I'll just be showing you guys the key areas of each of the three pieces of software. So if we look at the ribbon here, we've got three different menus here. We've got Stringer RSpec, OSpec, and DSpec. Now, all three of these act in relatively the same way. The only difference is what they're actually able to attribute. Now, Stringer A-SPEC allows you to attribute anything from points to polygons to lines. Stringer O-SPEC allows you to attribute the same. That allows you to do points, lines, and polygons. Or DSpec actually, oh, sorry, let me just get rid of that. Stringer DSpec allows you to only do lines and polygons. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward. So we'll start off in Stringer RSpec here. Now, RSpec, if you guys remember, is for road features and furniture. So that's what we'll be looking for. You'll be looking for your stuff like your lights, any of your curb, pathways, all that kind of stuff. Now, it's very simple to actually choose these objects. We've got a big button here that says Add All RSpec Data. When we select this, just wait for that to turn up. We've got an option between two different files. Now, I'll show you guys where to find these files later, but this is what holds all of that information. Everything we want to attribute, all the fields, that can all be found along this path. These can be edited yourselves, or we can edit them, and that can be done by going to these paths and opening the files within. They open as a Excel document, so you can use Excel to open them up, have a look, and edit, and we'll go through that further later. So for now, I'm just going to select the current release, which is v3.0.5. And then I can start selecting the features I want to attribute. So if I just want to select this pathway center line here, you're then given a series of attributes you're able to attribute. Sorry, series of attributes you can apply to that object. In this case, I want it to be the pathway center line, so I merely double click that. You will see in the corner here that it's also stating the type. Now in this case, we've selected a line, so it's only going to give me the attributes with the type of a line. If I selected a point, it would give me a list of all the point types that I was able to attribute. And if it gives me a polygon, it actually allows me to select a polygon or a line, just in case you've decided to close off one of your lines in the future. So for now, I'm just going to hit proceed, and that opens up our forms. Now, this form is where we fill in all of our different fields. So if you were doing this in something like QGIS, you would have to manually input all of this information every single time. Here, we don't have to do that. We're able to do it all just through this here. So if I wanted to set up something like the street name, you'll see it's just set the C here. I'll just call that Blake Street. We can set in the pipe location. Currently, there's no pipe attached to this road, so we don't have to worry about that. You can set your chainage. All this information can be customized. Now, you'll notice down here, however, that we have a drop-down menu. Similar to where this file here lives, we've actually got another, this ties into another file within that folder. It will be called something like, in this case, it's a source file, so it'll be called source.csv. We're asking it to reference that file, and we want to select something from within there. So it's probably easier to see if I select something like middle of the road. We'll select pavement. Yep. Yep. So we got a bit more of a drop down here. So we're able to select stuff like what is the actual pole made out of. You recognize stuff like galvanized iron, concrete, steel. You can select all this from a drop-down menu. You can add to this by adding to the CSV file that will be tied into, and you can find where that file lives by searching for the RSpec lighting attributes array.csv. Now, if I apply a street name here and hit proceed, so you don't have to enter this every single time, it actually holds on to that data. So if I select this road here and go back to pavement centerline, you'll see that it's actually retained that Blake Street. Now it's done that so that you don't have to every single time enter Blake Street into that field if you're doing multiple streets or multiple objects or such. So it's just a neat little function to have. So moving on from there, you've got the ability to remove any data that you've inputted recently. That allows you to just strip any of these objects from any of their data, which means you don't have to worry about any mistakes you've made. However, if you don't want to remove all your data, you just want to edit it. If you select Add All RSpec Data again and select that object, it'll actually open it back up. So if I go back into pavement here, it's actually retained all that information. If I had to change something in here, it would have held onto it, and you would have been able to edit it again. Moving on from there, you've got Listel Empty RSpec Data. This actually shows everything that hasn't been given any data. So it also zooms to it, so you can get around the survey with ease, and then you can just add the data to it. It's a nice way to find out what you've missed and what you haven't missed. Once you've done all that, you've got the ability to export to GIS. Now, you're able to export the MGA zone. So for Victoria, we're actually in zone 55, so I can export it as zone 55. And depending on which council you're submitting the data to, you've got the ability to submit as a mid-MIF file or a shape file. Now, the council themselves will let you know which format you're meant to be supplying to them. I find that many of them will accept the mid-MIF. I have yet to find any that won't or will actively say no to it. The shape file, again, many councils will take it, but most of the time we do submit the mid-MIF. So exporting that is as simple as hitting OK. It's telling us what it's found that has been attributed and what it's going to be exporting. And it's actually, I'll just get up this file here. It's exported all that to where my data set originated from. So this is the original drawing, and it's exported everything to here. I'll show you guys how that looks in a second. A good way to check to see what's been exported itself is a program called QGIS. It's good for just bringing in data, and you should be able to find all of it in there. So I'll show you guys that later. So moving on from there, we'll move into OSpec. So open space information, what you were doing here. So again, you just start with Add All OSpec Data. You'll be asked to choose which file type you want to, or which folder you want to work in. In this case, I've got an edit file here. I'll just be using that one. And we're able to go around and start selecting open space information. So I can select this bin here. I want to apply some information here. We've got our drop downs again, so we can choose what we think it is. Manufacturer, material made out of. In this case, we'll make it a brick bin. Makes sense. So all this can be filled in and edited. None of this is automated in any way. You would have to fill it all in yourself. And then once you're done, you'd hit proceed, and that has now had attribute information attached to it. So again, if I wanted to edit that information, I would click on Add All OSpec Data again and select that object. You'll see it's retained that brick change and everything else. Now, make sure that you always hit proceed after you finish attributing something. If you don't hit the proceed button, it's not going to retain anything, because the only other option is cancel, and exiting out of this will act the same as a cancel. So you just make sure you're hitting that proceed button to save all of your changes. Now, if you come into one of these and you believe that everything has been filled in correctly, it's just a neutral file or something, you can hit proceed to just bring all that information into an attribute, attribute all that information into the object and just move on. Again, you've got the ability to list all the data that has been filled in. See all the attribute information applied to that object. You can also show any of the data that you've filled in and zoom to it, as you could within RSpec. You can remove all the OSpec data. So if you filled in something incorrectly or you've decided that the oval was done incorrectly, you can just remove that data straight from it. And again, you're able to export. It's exactly the same as what was in the previous one. So you've got your MGA zone, mid-MIF, and shape. So it's exporting mid-MIF again, just so that we retain similarities between it all. So that's OSpec. As you can see, it's relatively the same between RSpec and OSpec, and DSpec again acts the same.
Jack?
Yes?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's an interesting question from Glenn, actually, in regards to selecting multiple objects. And I can only assume that Glenn is referring to assigning the same attribute data to multiple objects. Is it possible to select more than one object to assign and assign data to it? Or is it object by object?
At the moment, it's object by object. We are looking into allowing you to do multiple objects, but at the current argument is that each object should be done individually in case there is a change in it. There is something minutely different if we just automate the process of selecting everything and allowing you to do all of them. You could miss something that has changed. So doing them individually just allows you to catch anything like that. Is he okay with that answer? Or?
Yep, absolutely fine. No, thank you. Yeah, cheers, Jack.
Cool. Okay, so DSpec has a few other options a few other abilities that the other two specs don't have, and that's due to how it works with drainage and how it works with property connections. Now, with the drainage, you've got pits and you've got pipes. They're a bit unique in how ASpec information is normally lodged. They're actually required to show the top and the pipe invert on the same pit and pipe. So you've got to attribute the pits, and then you've got to tie in the pipe information to those pits. So the way we do this, there's an order to doing these. You're actually needing to start with the pits and then do the pipes second. And I'll show you guys the reason for this in a minute. So we're just going to start with the pits. Now, you want to select the polygon that the pit has been, what shows the pit itself. I'll just select pits here. And you'll be asked to select the center line of the pit. Now, I'm selecting this point here, and the reason I'm selecting that is because this is the pit lid's height. So someone has gone along and picked up an elevation on the pit lid. And you'll notice that the X and Y coordinates have been automatically filled in along with the cover level. Now, that's been filled in that way automatically by us. You guys don't have to worry about that. Once it's selected, it's already there. And then if you wanted to change it, you can either do it manually or you can select new pit coordinates to select another depth within here. So for now, I'm just going to hit proceed, and I'll just move to the other side quickly and do that one. So you select pit. I want to select the top of the cover. All the information's filled out. Looks correct. 10125. And then I want to select the pipe. Now, watch what happens to the pipe once I've selected it. This is how you know that this information has been correctly filled in. You'll see that the visual representation of the pipe has actually moved off of its original point. It's moved to the cover level. Now that's because the pipe needs to be shown coordinate-wise to the middle of the pit. So if we look in here, you'll actually see that it's filled in the information itself. It's found which one is downstream and which one is the upstream, which way it's flowing. It's filled in each of those coordinates based on the pit information that we entered prior. And it's also filled in the invert levels. And I believe the cover levels, no, cover levels has not been filled in. So it's just showing the inverts here. So all that information is filled out automatically. You don't have to worry about any of that. And once you hit proceed, all that information is tied in.
Jack.
Yep.
So questions coming in about the polygon or the polyline that's been used to create the pit. Obviously, there was a fair amount of attributed data on there. Considering it was just a polyline, how is the software able to understand what the inverter level is, for example, or cover level, just as a polyline? Is there another object which is assisting here?
Yep. So the polygon itself doesn't have any, well, now it has that information attached to it, but we've originally pulled that information off of this COGO point here. So the COGO point is vital in getting that elevation onto the polygon. That's why I had to select a coordinate point or a COGO point along with the polygon itself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's an integral part of using it, isn't it? It's not. We're not simply coming up with values assigned to the polyline. The point is the integral part, as you say, the integral part of the selection process. Yeah, great.
Yes, without that COGO point, you won't be able to fill in any of the rest of the information. It simply will not let you.
Thank you.
Okay. From here, we also do the same with property connections. Most of this is filled out automatically once you, well, not most of it. Key areas of it are filled out automatically. So I'll just select property connections. You'll see that it actually looks at the connections and it fills in this automatically. You don't have to worry about any of it. It's looking at the beginnings and the ends and automatically populating those values. So you don't have to go typing them in yourself or anything. It also puts in the length of the property connection and the invert level if it manages to find them. In this case, I don't have anything tied to these points. I believe one end is actually set to negative 9999, which is the default. Yep, which it has been. And it just runs with that. So you've got a little bit more automation within DSpec than you do in the other two. This is due to how they're generally picked up. And yeah. Other than that, you've got the same abilities you had within OSpec and RSpec. You can list all the data that you have populated in here. So you can see everything that we've put in. You can list all of your empty data and zoom to it. You can remove the data if you so wish. In this case, I don't, because I'll be showing you guys how this looks within QGIS. And then you've got the ability to export to GIS. So I'll just export this so that we can have a look at him. So it's found that I've edited all of these fields. You'll see that it's actually picked up the DSpec, the RSpec, and the OSpec ones that I've filled in. I'll hit OK. And if I look into this file here, we can see all of our information. So we'll open this up within QGIS and just have a look. Just give me a second. I've accidentally selected my PowerPoint, which I probably don't want to drag in. And we can see all of our information has been exported. All of it seems to have come through correctly. It all looks to be in the right location. If we open this up, yeah. So yeah, we can see all that's come through correctly. We can move on from there. In this case, no, I don't want to save it, so I'll just discard that. So earlier I mentioned the fact that you could open up the folders where all of the attribute tables lived. Now, where that folder lives, when I open up the right file, is actually here within Stringer CAD v21. You'll find this within Stringer your C drive, program data, CSS, and then Stringer CAD v21. Now, you've got three files in here. You've got DSpec, OSpec, and RSpec. If you do wish to customize any of these, I do recommend making a copy of them. This will not impact it in any way. It's just that when you first start the program, you will be asked which file type you want to select. So if I just want to choose edit for this, and then I can start changing anything in here. Now, the ones that will be most likely to be edited will be these, the attribute arrays. Actually, I'll open up the pipes one so that we have a bit of familiarity with it. Now, this is where all of the information that lives within the field sits. Let's open this up a bit more. Now, excuse me. The first thing you want to remember is these first two fields can't be edited. If you change these, it will cause a fail in the software. It'll actually say that the attributes array you're trying to work with has an error. Please go fix it. So make sure that neither of these have been edited in any way before running it. This is just saying for our software, it's just a value so that we know what we're dealing with. And yeah. Now, I'll just tell you what each of these areas actually means. So the ID is just telling you what you're going to be attributing. The description is just a little reminder for you as to what you're talking about. So in this case, I want to do the type of the pipe. It's telling me, okay, pipe type is what I want to fill in. A few examples of them are pipe, open, culvert, subsoil. Now, the type here, I've got L. What L is referring to is that it means I want to go looking for a list. So the drop-down menus that I had prior, I want to use one of those. In this case, I have pipe types.csv that I want to work with. If I go looking for that pipe type CSV, that actually lives within this folder as well. I'll just do pipe types. Yep, there it is. So I'm able to choose between any of these drop downs. So this side here is what's going to be attributed within the drawing. Well, this side here is just a little bit more information on what each of these are. If you've got a C value, that's a characters. So I'm able to put 31 characters into this default label here. So instead of having CBE, I could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, everything up to 31 characters with no issues. If you've got 15, you're able to have 15 characters. If you've got 100, you're able to do 100, and so on and so on. If you've got C on its own, it actually, well, you can see it here that I've got it here. That's because we're hard encoding that, so it doesn't matter as much. If you've got it on its own, you would get an error because it doesn't know how many characters it's allowed to supply for that area, which means that it just strings on the value over and over again. If you have an R value, that just means that you're able to input numbers. A C value means that it's, well, again, you're able to input what you want. An I value is a negative value, so you're able to use a negative value if you so wish. I believe that's it for in here. So yeah, that's how you go about using that. Anything you put into the default value, that is what's going to initially come through, if that makes sense. So whatever's in here will be what first turns up, and then you can move on, and then you can edit it further from there. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to show. Do you have any? Are there any questions sitting there, JT?
Not specifically regarding the process of what you're showing in the tools. Obviously, folks, if you want to submit any questions about what you're seeing in respect of what the software is doing, feel free to pop them in the Q&A panel. Look, I guess in a nutshell, for what Jack was just showing off there with the CSV, my take on that was the folder within DSpec, RSpec, OSpec, that is contained, for example, this folder here called V905 edit. Your best practice would be to copy that folder. If you install a version of the software, copy it and edit it, because if you do go through a number of CSV files and make a number of different edits, you've always got the original to fall back on, but it also means you've got a customized version as well as the original, so it's always worth copying. So when Jack fired up I can't remember if it's DSpec, OSpec, or RSpec, it offered a particular folder location. And obviously it'll ask, as Jack said, one of those particular folders, it'll offer you, say, hey, which one would you like to start off with for your project you use? So if you've got multiple different scenarios, multiple authorities that you work with, you could have, as you can see here, 3 different example folders with different information contained within them.
Yeah.
We had a couple of other questions just in regards to how the data is attributed. A couple of suggestions as well, which was interesting. But look, if nobody else has any other questions, we might just close off. I will just leave the panel open in the background. Jack, do you mind if I just share my screen just to close off? Yep. In that case?
Can stop sharing.
No problem. And I will just share my screen. You know what we had at the end? We've forgotten to run that poll.
Yes.
We've got another poll very, very quickly. Yes. Do you want to explain?
So there is a second set of standardizations that councils are adopting called ACDC. We're just curious to know how many of you have heard of ACDC and whether or not you've run into a requirement to submit in this format if you have.
Yeah. Oh, interesting split at the moment. So 50-50, in fact, more people, wow, okay. Many of you are responding now. So we've got 50-50 split on ACDC specification. And then obviously because of that, whatever percentage said yes, yes, many people are saying that they have a requirement. So 50% of those that have answered have said yes, they do have a requirement.
What might interest you guys is that we're currently working on a set of tools for ACDC submission. They're currently in beta at the moment, but hopefully you guys will see those shortly. There should be a web session up. Well, I can't give a date at the moment, but we are planning to do one that will focus on ACDC itself.
Great.
So that might be of interest to you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jack. And thanks ever so much for that comprehensive, I guess, more sort of bite-sized webcast compared to the ones we usually do. But as you can see, it's an extremely quick and intuitive tool to get your hands on, and particularly in the CAD environment, makes it very, very simple to put the content together and export. So going forward, if you do want to grab a recording or any recordings regarding in related to civil survey solutions, they're all found on our YouTube channel here. There's a selection of product webcast playlists that are found on that particular channel, such as Civil Site Design, Stringer, AutoCAD, Civil 3D. So feel free to go and have a look at those particular playlists. If you are interested in receiving a newsletter from us, you can go to this particular web page here and subscribe, and you can subscribe purely to live webcast emails only, so we won't be bombarding you with anything else. And if you do have any feedback, there was some interesting feedback in that webcast in regards to how we could improve or possibly change parts of that software. Feel free to pop to this particular link here and provide us with any feedback you have. It's the only way that we improve is by feedback from the user base. Thanks again, Jack, for that webcast. Thank you all for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.